session. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because everybody coming from the world. So especially in Korea, 9:30 p.m. in the evening. I'd like to express my sincere welcome to all speakers, panelists, and participants. The name of this seminar is Water-Related Investment and Economic Development. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself as the moderator in this session. My name is Keun Choi, President, International Center for the Urban Hydroinformatics Research and Innovation, and Professor Emeritus at Incheon National University, Republic of Korea. I had, several experience in the water-related field, including CEO of the K-Water, which is the government-owned water corporation, which is responsible water planning and management in Korea. This seminar will focus for the social and economic benefits of the water-related investments. Also, will focus for the financial returns on water-related investments, especially for the economic development and the general social welfare. In this seminar, we'll look at the different types of the analysis. There are seldom clearly presented all politicians, government officials, and the social leaders and consumers. These focusing points are extremely important at the time of growing needs for investment in the water infrastructure, water services, and water resource management. First, this seminar is composed of the three different sessions, which are first session, examining the social and economic benefits created by its water investment. In the second session, the urgent case to mobilize capital. In the third, efficient public funding, maximizing taxes, tariffs, and transfers. As I just explained, I'd like to explain a little more in the session one. We'll quantify the benefits, both economic and social, of water-related investments, and highlights the challenge in the investing in each sectors. In the session two, we'll cover different cases of the financing water investment, including more innovative approaches such as blended finance and climate finance. In the last session, we'll bring together the discussion from session one and session two. Through this seminar, policymakers and consumers will learn the benefits of the water-related investments and the different avenue to getting them finances. Through this seminar, policymakers and partners will be encouraged for planning investments and giving how can we give the priority for funding to optimize public funding and crowding finances. This was the general introduction for our seminar, as I talked in the previous time. So this session is composed of those three different sessions. Now I'm going to open the first session, session one. In this session, I'm going to invite one keynote speaker and 4 panelists. In this session, 5 experts shown in the screen will share data and examples and why water-related investments are crucial to a healthy economic and population. A keynote speaker from the government of Rwanda will share his experience on the role of water infrastructures in the macroeconomy of Rwanda. Then four panelists will broaden the discussion to address the economic, social, and environmental contributions of water investments, with special emphasis on the economic aspects. First of all, I'd like to introduce keynote speaker Bernard Musana from the government of Rwanda. He is a head of knowledge and forecasting hub department at the Rwanda Water Board. So the title of the speech is the role of the water investment in the macroeconomic of Rwanda. So I like to invite, Bernard Musana. Bernard Musana, can you speak to us for your keynote speech?
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah.
Can you hear me perfectly?
Yeah, there is no problem. Thank you. Good.
Thank you. I'm feel very privileged to start this session, first session, with this exercise, presenting this exercise completed by various partners from the World Bank, from Stockholm Environmental Institute, and with a certain support also of UNICEF. Next slide. So in the developing countries, urbanization is growing faster, and population is increasing at a rapid pace, and industrial development is happening as well. With agriculture change, all those is putting a high pressure on water resources, but climate change will exacerbate this. So this is on one hand, and then in the other end, we also see growing practices of linking water and economy. This is important because we cannot plan as we used to do, just based on assumptions and plausible scenarios. Next slide, thank you. So I'm presenting the case of Rwanda, where we had a country of 12 million people plus, with 26,700 square plus, with almost all the water generated in the country, as a good practice, as an attempt that is quite not taken often, of linking a WIP model with a macroeconomic model with enough granularity, with more than 26 sectors considered in the modeling, with the same social accounting matrix used for other economic modeling. So what are the WIP, when I'm discussing the WIP model in the next slide? The WIP model is an important software used for water resources planning. And this also was developed with a certain detail, the same detail as the one we use for catchment management plan. That means with a level, an hydrologic unit lower than level 2. And with the hydrology considering the land use, the climate, looking back at the historical flow to calibrate the model, looking at the future, while the use and the return flow was considered from the domestic, irrigation, livestock, industry, and environmental flow. So both WIP and macroeconomic models were calibrated and to reconstitute the historical GDP or hydrology. So what are the insights we got from this analysis and all this detailed information? Next slide, thank you. Three major insights we can present here. First of all, under Vision 2050, which is a vision of turning Rwanda into high income country or a business hub with aiming at $12,000 GDP per capita. This will not be met unless we have some important changes or interventions, because we are reaching the limit of supply. The second insight is that if we don't go through the Vision 2050, the economy of Rwanda will be very much climate dependent, meaning, and with a very fluctuating GDP, which will not allow to transition to industry and services, which is the future for such a small and densely populated country. So there's a very an important need for another scenario, which was the major finding of this study, which is the water resilient scenario. So this water resilient scenario in my last slide is, next slide, please. This water resilient scenario is mainly looking at multi-scale storage, looking at also changing the demand side because the supply is at a limit, looking at groundwater, reduce leakages with the non-revenue water still very high at the moment. We need climate smart agriculture, and we need legal and regulatory. So those are my take for today, and this will help a multi-stakeholder platform discussion toward investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bernard Musana. So he explained for the macroeconomic, approach in the Rwanda water resource, planning and implementation. Especially, he gave us very good, findings and very good recommendations. So this finding as well as recommendation can be, discussed after finishing the other four panelists. So in the later. Right now, so I'm going to invite, panelists. First panelist, Guy Fulton, from the development economist of the UNICEF. The title of the speech is Benefits and Cost of the Water and Sanitation Targets for the post-2015 Development Agenda. So please, Guy, so can you say for your preparation for us?
Thank you, Professor Choi. Thank you very much for the introduction. So yes, I am working with UNICEF as senior advisor in New York, responsible for our work on WASH financing, economics, knowledge management, and system strengthening. And I'm very pleased to be able to speak briefly to present you today 3 different snapshots of cost-benefit analyses that have been conducted for water, sanitation, and hygiene. The first will be the global cost-benefit studies. The second will be a country example of sanitation interventions in India. And the third will be specifically looking at cholera hotspots where the costs and benefits are quite different from sort of average or regular settings. So next slide, please. So over the years, I've been sort of had the privilege to work on cost-benefit studies from the early 2000s. And so every 4 years, we've had updates from 2004, 2008, 2012, and then the latest is 2015 for WHO and for the World Bank. And we do see changes over time because all the underlying numbers are sort of recollected, and so some of the relationships change, such as health impact, and so we do see changes in numbers. And the latest numbers are presented here, showing the comparison between the 2012 global cost-benefit study and the 2015 global cost-benefit study. Now, for water supply, it shows that we've got an increase in the cost-benefit ratio, which is the number of dollars return per dollar invested, and we see an increase for rural areas up to over 6 return, and for urban areas around 3 return. And this is happening because partly because the health benefits have been increasing slightly due to the findings from the meta-analyses conducted globally. And also the underlying unit costs have changed, and on average the rural costs have gone down quite considerably in this new study. And then for sanitation, we see a similarity between the 2012 study and the 2015 study for rural areas, where the ratio stays at around 5, but we see a reduction in the urban ratio because the unit costs are considerably higher for sanitation in urban areas than in rural areas. And so that's why we see the reduction in the rate. However, I don't think it's a cause for concern. The average across water and sanitation remains around 5 return per dollar invested. And these, of course, are underestimates, because these estimates only include some of the health benefits and some of the time savings. There are many other benefits related to water and sanitation, which I'm sure we're aware of, around the productivity impact of water, around reuse of sanitation, and around broader environmental impacts for the population and for tourism and for business. So the 5 is going to be an underestimate of the actual return. Next slide, please. So looking at a specific country case study, this was a detailed analysis done benefiting from a customized household survey of 10,000 households in India in 2017. And so we could compare different types of household based on their income level. This was in rural areas. And so we see, on average, a societal cost-benefit ratio of just over 4. That's the black line. But we see for poorer households a greater cost-benefit ratio than for richer households because of the responses they gave in the survey around their time use and around their health benefits, and because they invested less in their toilets, so the toilet was cheaper. And we also see the financial versus the economic savings. For financial, we included mainly the savings in the health costs from disease. In economic, we include value of lives saved and productivity impacts, which were not financial in nature. So we see for poorest households, the economic return is 7 to 1, which is very considerable and really strongly justifies the rural sanitation program in India. Moving on to the next slide. So the last example I'll give is from the roadmap to eliminate cholera. We conducted this study 4 years ago, and because cholera hotspots are specific areas with high rates of disease, and they're often poorer and with higher potential to benefit, we actually see a much higher benefit than the global ratios that were shown earlier, of around 12.7 benefit per dollar invested to implement the cholera roadmap and to eliminate cholera in those hotspots. And this was across 47 countries, and it drew on the unit costs from the World Bank study conducted in 2015. So there's a lot more work that can be done to estimate the cost benefit in specific hotspots using more validated localized data. So this just provides a global picture. And when we take out the operation and maintenance costs, so maybe looking at it from a donor perspective where they're investing in the capital costs, it increases the cost benefits considerably to over 22. So I think this is very encouraging for those of us who are working on specific diseases like cholera, where we see much greater benefits coming from working in those very disadvantaged high disease areas. I think with that, there's enough detail given, but you've got the references you need for any further reading, and please contact me if you have any questions. Thank you very much, and back to Professor Choi.
Okay, thank you so much, Guy, Houghton. He, explained, very good example for the cost benefit, ratio. So from the different areas, such as rural as well as urban area, will be different. Also, there are some difference, depends on the household numbers. So also in the finally, he explained further some implementation for the cholera, control. The cost to benefit effect will be very good compared to the others. So thank you so much, Guy Houghton. So we are going to review during the discussion time for that. In the next speakers panelist is Jin-Seok Seo. He is a principal researcher at K-Water. The title of the speech is effective, effect analysis water resource development investment with Korea's economic growth. Please, Dr. Jin-Seok Seo, please give the speech for us.
Thank you. Hi all, my name is Jin-Seok Seo, working for K-Water Institute in Korea. I'm very pleased to see you today. My presentation focused on examining how water investment contributes to economic growth in Korea. So I hope to help better understand such a relationship with Korea's experience. Next, please. Three keywords I have today: economic growth, water SOC investment, and water resources stock, WRS. Next slide, please. And next. When you say that water infrastructure like dams and water supply systems is an essential element of economic development, it is generally acknowledged to be true, but I was wondering how much such water infrastructure had a quantitative or empirical effect on economic growth, at least in Korea. Next slide. Many studies in Korea had estimated the relationship between water resources and economic development, mainly by estimating the economic ripple effect with the input-output analysis, and we used the total amount of water resources investment at specific point in time, as you see on the slide. Next slide, please. However, I believe that more concrete analysis is necessary rather than these simple comparisons. To do so, we tried to create new data with water associated investments, water resources stock data, like long-term time series data, and which is more appropriate to verify long-term effects of investments related to water SOC. Next slide, please. And next. So we had reliable water resources stock data through several steps. And then we found that the water resources WRS has causal relationship directly affecting GDP. Next slide. And next. As a result, when applying WRS to analyze the effect on economic growth in Korea, 1% increase in WRS affects 0.577% increase in GDP until 1997 and 0.214% after 1997. This result means water-related investment has bigger effect on GDP in the early stage of economic development. Next slide, please. And next, yeah. Comparing the amount of water assets investment and WLS as data, we can see that WLS is a more reasonable one and which has more empirical relationship with Korea's economic growth. Next slide, please. There is a couple of findings and implications that I suggest for industrial aspects. Investment related to water SOC has more contribution to economic growth than both labor and capital inputs in the early stage. For developing and least developed countries, Korea's experience would be helpful when considering more water SOC investment. For water companies, this result is reasonable, supporting data for advancing into overseas water markets in both developing and least developed countries in the future. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Jin-Seok Seo. He presents the very good, example between the investment of the water resource, as well planning as well as management. I guess is proportional to the economic development, such as linked with GDP. And even though the data for the long term is less compared to the short-term data, based on their available data, he reviewed or calculated the how much it can be contributed for the economic development for the water resource investment. And then finally he gave us several good findings for us. That finding as well as implementation can be discussed during our discussion time. Thank you so much again for the Jin-Seok Seo. So next speaker will be Lucia. She is a senior partnerships and impact officers of Australian Water Partnership. The title of the speech, applying the nature-based solutions for the social and economic benefits. Lucia, can you speak for us? Okay.
Thank you, Choi.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. In this presentation, I will cover an approach to valuing the benefits of nature-based solutions applied in the Greater Mekong region. The project was supported by the Australian Water Partnership's Australian Mekong Water Facility. It was established by the World Bank and the Australian government's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, DFAT, and was implemented by the Cooperative Research Center for Water Sensitive Cities and the International Center for Environmental Management. The AWP is a Water for Development partnership supported by DFAT. AWP mobilizes Australia's internationally recognized expertise in water management to meet the needs of developing countries in the Asia Pacific. More than half of the world's population now live in urban areas. That is set to increase to 68% by 2050. And the major challenge for cities is to provide the services that expanding populations need at an affordable price. And it is a challenge exacerbated by climate change and related disasters like flooding. On their own, conventional or gray infrastructure approaches like dams or levees cannot deliver climate resilient cities at an affordable cost. Nature-based solutions or green solutions like constructed wetlands, rain gardens, and bioswales can complement conventional approaches. I'll just drop a couple of concepts that are related to the presentation. Next slide, please. The urban transitions framework that you see on the slide is aspirational and forward-looking. It aims to enhance the livability of cities beyond basic services of supply, sewage, drainage, towards increasing environmental protection through pollution management, maintaining healthy water balance by promoting waterway protection, And finally, towards achieving intergenerational equity and climate resilience through adaptive and multifunctional urban design. Next slide, please. Nature-based solutions are solutions that leverage nature and the power of healthy ecosystems to protect people, optimize infrastructure, and safeguard a stable and biodiverse future. In the lower Mekong Basin, in the next slide, future exposure to climate change effects include flooding, sea level rise, heat, droughts, storms, and shifts in vegetation that could damage $18 billion worth of infrastructure and decrease economic productivity by $16 billion annually by 2050. In the example that is presented in the slides, between mid-October and mid-December in 2016, heavy rainfall produced 5 consecutive flooding events across 18 provinces in Vietnam. Next slide, please. Nature-based solutions are so flexible that they can provide benefits to any context when integrated into existing and planned infrastructure to form hybrid solutions. We can see this in economic terms. This graph shows that for each case study, a nature-based solution hybrid approach had flood mitigation and broader benefits compared to a do-nothing or a conventional approach. And the pie in the next animation shows the direct and indirect benefits of the Sung Song Freshwater Wildlife Conservation Park in Phu Quoc, and also demonstrated economic opportunities. So you might ask, how did these intangible benefits get assigned a dollar sign? Next slide, please. Well, the project used an integrated urban flood management framework to identify, compare, and fund hybrid green-gray solutions. This 5-step approach aims to empower public, private, and community action to respond to local, city, and catchment scale needs and opportunities. Throughout these 5 steps, strong stakeholder engagement and co-creation of solutions is key to capture all the benefits. Indigenous people's perspectives are valuable in all steps and would enrich vision, solutions, and valuation. First, consider them since every city is different and unique. They need unique solutions. So we need to consider hydrological, social, environmental, and economic perspectives, as well as flooding and broader policy and strategic issues. Importantly, gender equality, disability, and social inclusion need to be considered to leave no one behind. To do the flood risk assessment, we need flood information on historical floods and other natural hazards. You could see how it would be a great advantage to have Indigenous people's input here. Then we can identify culturally and context-appropriate flood management intervention based on the vision set in step number 1. This could be to retreat, adapt, or defend. Once a range of options have been identified, they need to be compared. Now, the water-sensitive cities team developed an investment framework for economics of water-sensitive cities, which is a comprehensive database of dollar values for non-market benefits generated by water-sensitive investments, such as nature-based solutions. This is then included into a benefit cost analysis, which compares direct, indirect benefits, costs, risks of different options over time. Understanding the distribution of these costs and benefits across time, locations, and community groups informs funding and financing options. In other words, who should pay what, how, and when. For example, a case can be made for funding public good benefits through existing or new broad-based taxes or tariffs. Next slide, please. This is just a visual image of what I just said. Finally, I'll leave you with a call to action. What values could be added to your city if you were to consider your risks, your city's risk, opportunities, and vision? How do you identify the portfolio of actions for your city? How do you build a case for action? In other words, what do you want to do and how do you get the money for it? I'll leave you with a few takeaways in the next slide. Even though we have shared regional challenges like climate change and population growth, each city has unique potential for nature-based solution benefits. Nature-based solutions are flexible and add value as part of green-gray infrastructure. And valuing benefits beyond the economic costs can help identify what's best for a community rather than just focusing on the lowest direct cost. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Lucia. You know, call to action is very important. So as you talk about during the presentation. So Russia, examined the 2016 severe flooding in Vietnam. So he, changed several, benefit, indirect or direct benefit, translate to the dollars, and then she identified the importance of the natural-based solutions. And finally, she is very, good, summarize for the her examination, as well as identify the importance of between green and gray, approach rather than some other gray approach itself. Thank you so much for Russia. Last speakers will be Songjun Byun. He is a principal researcher of the International Center for Urban Water Hydroinformatics Research and Innovation in the Republic of Korea. The title of his speech, Developments of the Integrated Index for Flood Resilience. Yeah, please, Dr. Byun, can you speak for us?
Thank you, Professor Choi, whom actually I respect the most. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Songjun Byun from International Center for Urban Water Hydroinformatics Research and Innovation. My topic is about the index for flood resilience. Next slide, please. My topic for the presentation is about the Asian Water Development Outlook 2020 publication, ADO 2020. Our part of the research was focused on the development of an index for assessing flood and water-related disaster resilience. The focal point of the ADO series is publication of an index which assesses water security for every partner country of ADB across Asia and Pacific. This index has developed and changed over the years, but at its core, it assesses how well nations manage the water resources that they are endowed with minimized scientific background, but generally with the political approach and financial investment from domestic or OD, whatever. Next slide, please. While I'm not go through how every key dimensions was formulated in this presentation, my topic is key dimension 5, the bottom one, with water-related disaster security. And this KD5 is about water-related disasters security, assesses a nation's recent exposure and vulnerability versus their capacity and investment to resist and bounce back from the damage. Next slide, please. This is the result of the water security assessment. Actually, no country scored the top score of 5 in 2020. Next slide, please. I can say there was one just positive finding in ADO 2020 was that, in general, the report had seen nations across Asia and the Pacific increase their scores with each publication. In particular, since 2013, many nations have raised their score from 2 to 3, suggesting that the region as a whole is developing system which enhance water security for their citizens. Next slide, please. Yes, given that short overview of ADO 2020, let's go to KD5. Next slide, please. This page is definition of KD5. How KD5 we developed. The index is about the risk and about the variables. Hazard exposure is about the frequency of the disaster, I mean, kind of experience. And vulnerability is about the state of the community itself. And the capacity is about the presence and investment of infrastructure and governmental systems. Next slide, please. The final results were scores for each nation, which were put on a 15-point scale to represent water-related disaster security. As you can see from this slide, the highest in Australia and New Zealand, and while the lowest in the Micronesia and Tuvalu. The circle on the right side of the slide show the relative proportion of the risk itself from flooding, drought, and storm. Flooding is the biggest, while the storm is the smallest in Asia Pacific. Since year 2013, it was found that the capacity generally increased while the vulnerability decreased, both of which are signs of progress toward water security. I mean, the kind of their investment to improve them. Risk in East Asia dropped rapidly over this time period, while the risk in the Pacific remains the highest in the index. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, thank you for your attention. That's it for today. I prepared. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byun Song-jun. He explained further like water security index based upon the Asian Water Development Outlook 2020. So he developed, like a security index through some examination, and she, compared further water-related disaster security between Asian countries. So, and then he's going to be compared which countries will be more responsible for the disaster control, etc. So we are going to talk about during the discussing time for the others. Okay, thank you so much all speakers and the panelists for that. And then so we are going to have a panel discussion and the question and answers. So during about 20 minutes. So as long as if you have any good questions and comments for 5 different speeches, then we are going to discuss about it. First of all, I'd like to ask to the keynote speakers, Bernard, Musana. Based on for your presentation, your country urbanization as well as population is increased very severe, as well as agriculture and then industrial development is growing up. Therefore, more water consumption is expected in the future. But based on your presentation, multi-scale storage is a crucial component. So usually, multi-scale storage, such as them, may not easy to build during the short periods because of the environmental impacts as well as social inconvenience in many countries. In Rwanda, how could you, solve these issues without conflicts or inconvenience? So do you have any good, suggestion or experience in your country? Then you can give the very good, suggestion for all participants. Can you, give some comment for that?
Thank you. I think it's very important if you want to promote this program of multi-scale storage, to have a good governance and transboundary cooperation in place. Otherwise, it's very difficult and tension may easily arise. But Rwanda has a very good water diplomacy. I think in the Eastern Africa, we are training more water diplomacy people, but basically also investment is another issue. environment, of course, and that's why we want to really strengthen the water planning, the water resources planning, as we to consider all the dimensions, and the WIP model is also helping us because it helped the discussion. We now understand each of the impact of any investment, while the economic part also help us discussing with the on new financial instruments and the need for those instruments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And during my a speech, if you have any good suggestion and speech, and please give us during my speech. Or maybe Guy in UNICEF. So you did a very good examination for the cholera issues, but cholera control is very important in any developing countries, I guess. So because of the importance of the human lives, first increase of the investment of the sanitation facility will be very necessary. Then do you have any good suggestions for global effects, global issues to solve these issues? How can we approach to make more funding or good a solution approach? Do you have any good suggestion as a global effort for that?
Thank you for your question, Professor Choi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we face continued challenges to raise the necessary financing for water and sanitation, despite these good economic arguments. And so there is a gap between the evidence and the progress on the ground. So what we need to do, I mean, there are many things we need to do to address that. And one, I think, is to focus some of the analysis on the financial benefits to see who will make savings, and then target the fundraising or financing efforts towards those beneficiaries, because the economic benefits beyond the financial ones are harder to monetize. They're harder to get people to pay for. So focus on the financial. And I think one of the big constraints people face is that while it looks economically attractive on paper, they don't have the means to access financing. So whether it's an entrepreneur who's trying to set up a sanitation business, or it's the household who wants to sort of improve their sanitation, we need to do more to make upfront financing available to cover the investment cost, because we know that the main cost is the investment cost, although operation maintenance is key, as we know, to keep them running. So if we can just close the gap for businesses and households who have difficulty raising that upfront capital, I think that goes a long way. And we see a lot of good examples with microfinance organizations who are meeting that demand, that there is such a demand by households. And the final thing I'd like to say is around changing the willingness to pay of beneficiaries. It's related to my first comment about assessing the financial benefits. People can be encouraged and persuaded to change their mind related to social and health interventions if they are given better evidence, and if they there's some peer pressure to change. So we've seen many countries have made massive progress on achieving basic sanitation because of the community-led total sanitation initiative, which is around persuading and influencing communities and community members to change their sanitation behavior. So I think a lot more can still be done on that, and drawing on the best available evidence and so showing them the benefits is really key. So it's around communication as well as having good evidence.
Yeah, okay, thanks, guys. Thank you so much. We need to have more challenge for increasing the financial preparation between private as well as public, sectors with several different aspects. So based on the good, example from any other communication or organization, as well as from the experience from the different countries, will be very helpful to the other countries. So your good, experience will be very good, examples for the other countries. So thank you so much. And maybe Jin-Seok So, you gave us very good example between economic growth as well as water resource investments growth. I think there are many ways to increase the investment in the water facility. Based upon the Korean's experience, what would be the most fundamental to increase the investment in developing countries? Do you have any good suggestion for that?
Oh yes, actually, in economic terms, I would like to say data is relevant to both water resources and also the investment, because for decision makers, they can use the data and analysis. They can make sure the more investment related to water SOC, the higher economic growth. If any other conditions and environment is the same. So it is based on the reliable water and investment data, make and achieve their objectives and the economic growth.
And Professor Choi, if I could just come in here, Bernard, did you want to say a couple words on that too? Because I believe you've had similar experiences in Rwanda.
Yeah, thank you. I really liked the analysis with Korea, because they already observed that 1% GDP was influenced at the early development journey he measured. While we also look at the economic analysis was showing that we have more like 2 or 3% GDP impacted by the water investment if we implement what we are planning. And this will go in toward 2040, this impact will be less and less. So it was very interesting to see that that story is similar. So we need water investment earlier in the development than later. And that's an important maybe take home from here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. So, as well as Senior Advisor Bernard. Thank you so much for sharing for your experience. Based on the Jin-Seok So, reply, data is very important for any kind of analysis. But it is necessary to how can we share data with globally? So that kind of issue can be needed to be think in the future discussion, I guess.
Yeah. And Professor Choi, there is a follow-up question from in the chat for Dr. Jin-Seok. It says, have you seen any time gap between growth in GDP and the rate of water resources development? And have you done any analysis of public expenditure and water resources development?
So actually, I tried to make data with the WRS because there is a little bit gap between water resources investments and WRS, because water resources investments we can get the data from a specific point in time, but WRS we can use the analysis with the long-term analysis, but only water resources investment data cannot use the long-term time series long-term time series analysis. So that is the little bit. I think it's a big gap to analyze the concrete economic growth with GDP. And also, I think if I have chance to explain the expenditure costs, right?
Okay.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
Thank you so much, Lisa. During the my preparation, so your comment is very good. Jin-Seok, so you shared that experience between time difference between developing the infrastructure as well as GDP, etc. So it is good. It was a very good approach for that. Any other comments for first the speaker as well as Jin-Seok, so for the others? Otherwise, I'm going to continue.
May I come in just for the last question?
Right. Further clear?
May I?
Lucy?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. It's just my question is geared to any one of the panelists who can respond, because some people argue saying that improving the efficiency of the investment already made is equally important, like mobilizing new financing, because the turnover generated from the operational efficiency can improve the service delivery and also supporting expansion of service delivery for more increased segment of population. So what is your reflection on this thought? And secondly, I would like to hear also, what do you think is the role of the private sector in financing water supply development? Thank you so much. Over.
Maybe from the maybe Jin-Seok, maybe do you have any experience for the operation first, or Bernard? Or maybe you can have some comment for that.
Yes, I alluded to this question a little bit when we were talking of reducing the leakage, which is also taking for us up to 40% non-revenue water, which is immense compared to Japan. I think they are below 2% or something like that. So it's a lot of water lost. We don't have the same status of infrastructure from my quick scan in Africa, for instance, and it should be case by case. We cannot say a lot of area are poorly covered with water infrastructure. So there's this trade-off between improving the current infrastructure, service delivery, and expanding the coverage for other areas. One cannot forget the other. We are rural. This can be seen as a dilemma discussion from urban citizens wanting to have 24 hours water, while there are people who can spend a month without water. So I think we should strike a balance there.
Okay, thank you so much, Bernard. Okay, maybe at this time, so I like to ask to the Lucia. You focus for the nature-based, solution for the water-related infrastructure. I know I'm very agree about you. However, sometimes it is not easy to implement for the nature-based solution to the politicians as well as, like a decision makers, as well as some like people. Because especially for the design engineer, so they may not have good, like experience for that or good knowledge, for that. So how do you think about how can we increase for the capacity building for the decision makers, including politicians, as well as some design engineers, as well as some, like some influence the peoples in the social area for that, for that, how do you think about how can we increase knowledge sharing for that, for the especially for the like a nature-based solution for that? Do you have any comment idea for that? Or
thank you for your question, Choi. That's a very big question. Well, I can think of a couple of things, and one is related to addressing private sector and commercial investment. In the case study that I presented, or the approach I presented, it's critical to engage all of the stakeholders, depending on the scale you're working in, to map the benefits of all of them. So if the political environment is not conducive to investments, but the private sector or commercial sector are receiving benefits, they might be willing to pay, for example. Another option would be to rely on climate finance through grants and pilot and demonstration projects. Later down the track, nature-based solutions have a multiplier effect. So if you improve the quality of life of a community, a catchment, they are more able to contribute to society and cause, signify less of a burden, you could say. So having those type of demonstration projects could be the way to encourage or nudge further investments by governments, especially considering that doing nothing has a greater cost due to the risk of climate change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Lucia. Anyhow, that knowledge sharing is very important, as well as how can we increase for the funding as a private as well as public ways. But as shown in your final conclusion, maybe balance between green and gray infrastructure is very important for that. So, but our good example as well as experience will be very helpful to the certain developing countries. So please share your ideas and the experience for the other peoples. Maybe to the Dr. Songjun Byun, we are talking about from for the economic benefits for the water related investment. But in your slide, we are talking about further risk assessment criteria index. You are combining climate risk as a droughts, hydrological risk as a flooding, and meteorological risk as a storm. What is most sensitive, severe risk among three key risks during the Asian countries? So it is better to explain for the whole situation to the participants. Can you say for that?
Oh, thank you, Professor. Actually, we developed three different water-related disasters, with one with flooding and drought, and the other one is the storm. And actually, I have mentioned in the almost last slide of my presentation that flooding and drought are giving quite a big impact to the Asia and Pacific countries all. But risk due to the storm was much less, actually largely compared to the flood and drought, because storm is coming with huge impact, but at very certain area. If we see the scale of the Asia and Pacific, it is close to just a point. So a storm like typhoon and cyclone only affect a portion of those living in Asia and the Pacific, and this index looked all the people across the region. So three different disasters have different sensitivity and the impact in the area. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your explanation. So Asian countries is a little difference between the European countries for the flooding as well as some storms. So maybe some storms is even though very severe, but so usually flooding is more effective for the other effects. So maybe nowadays, like climate change is very severe. So maybe sometimes, like droughts in the certain countries will be more severe rather than the others. So that's why I asked to you for the it will be same as index or not. So thank you so much for your like explanation. Anyhow, thank you so much for nice impressive discussion between speakers as well as panelists. Nowadays, maybe I like to open the discussion between participants. Any participants through this linkage have any questions, maybe comment related to our topic. We are like appreciate for your involvement through this discussion. So as long as if you have any speech comment, then please introduce yourself, and then if you have any questions to the certain speakers, then you need to mention about it. So
thank you very much,
people,
Dr. Choi.
Yeah.
I'd like to address to Lucia, please, at the Australian Water Partnership. I'm very curious about her experience and knowledge with respect to incentives that can advance sustainable investment.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, Claire. In terms of incentive, it depends a lot on the political and social environment and the type of benefits that are mapped. If all of the benefits are mapped, there can be more incentives for the government. For example, if climate change impacts are reduced, or incentive for the private sector if their water risk to continue their operations as well is reduced. There are other types of incentives that are a bit more like a stick, which could be polluter pays if it's found that the benefits are, or the costs of an intervention or of an issue are carried by one section of the community and caused by another one. For example, that happens a bit with upstream, downstream communities. Other types of market-based mechanisms like offset abatement of treatment arrangements are yet to be explored, but would be interesting. We usually hear about carbon trading and offsetting, but I think that in this case, we're focusing very much of the same catchment, not polluting here and fixing it over there. So it depends a lot on the type of benefits identified.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Claire. So can I give another comments and questions from the participant?
Sorry, maybe.
Yeah,
sorry, I'll just jump in. We had a quick question on specifically incentivizing or specifically attracting different types of private investment. and how can that be not just incentivized, but how it can be done on a sort of financially sustainable and sound way, that it can be structural. So any experiences, any programs with attracting sort of more significant sums or funds coming from private sector would be very interesting to hear, whether it's in Rwanda or in Korea or Australia. Thank you.
Essentially, talking to the water investment in general, we have seen very interesting projects happening recently in Rwanda, but they are yet to come up to the whole spectrum of investment. They are currently, the Water Sanitation Corporation has initiated a PPP where they do a bulk purchasing of raw water directly from a private company. Also copying a bit what we are doing with the energy, where the private sector can directly sell to the national grid. It's also very interesting, but it's very new. We are very far from cost-reflective bills, which could have increased the revenue streams to all actors, and that is a long journey. So we have to work on very different instruments and lots of incentives to the private sector so that it's happened. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bernard. Active involvement from the private sectors is very important. Maybe there are many examples in Korea or some other countries. Russia, do you have any examples for the getting the private sector involvement as a PPP or some other activities?
Thank you, Troy. To involve the private sector again and to ensure that we incentivize effective and sustainable investment in technologies, we have to be very aware of our climate change risks and how they would affect us, because the risk of doing nothing would be greater. So for the private sector, they are interested in continuing their operations. They are driven by profit. So recently we have the ESG, the environmental social governance, social responsibility. And so the private sector also needs to gain a license. What they do affects the community. If the community doesn't want them there, it affects what they do. So I think it's about continuing talking and being aware of the climate risks that we have and how we reduce them and what solutions are available.
Yeah, thank you, Lucia. As long as, governance between private sectors and the public sectors is very important. So nowadays, more active involvement from the private sectors is increasing, especially from the large water consumption company, such as beers, etc., especially in Korea. So their involvement from the beginning of their design stage. So it's very essential to accelerate, to increase the investment for the water related investment. So I think so many other comments or experience will be show up in the later with some examples. We have around 5 minutes, so I'm going to have some closing remark for these sessions. Through this seminar, many good examples for the economic and the social developments through the water-related investment were introduced. Before closing this session, I'd like to a little summarizing for the several important points during the discussion. Maybe because the implementation of the water-related investments can be significantly contribute for the economic and the social benefits. So you already hear through the several presentation, more innovative approaches for finding the effective and comprehensive investment will be very helpful in the world, especially for the developing countries, I guess. Second, I'm going to focus for the investment consideration of the water-related facility from the preparation stage, such as design stage, two global main factors, which are climatic change and resilience, such as green infrastructure, need to be reviewed at a global point of view as well as global agenda. Third, the investment sources can be contributed as the private, public, government subsidies, tariffs, taxes, and the others. Therefore, the global effort for increasing investment funding should be increased by leading from the international agency, global leaders, and NGOs, etc. First, holistic approaches such as in the Rwanda for investment need to be considered rather than the simple approach for achieving more reasonable results for water relates, investment. Finally, Russia emphasized for the hybrid approaches between green and gray infrastructure for water related facility will be very a reasonable solution for the next generation as well as environmental aspects. So we are going to continue for discussion during the next two sessions. Finally, even though this session will be finished today shortly, but our next session will be continue on Monday at 9 a.m. on August 29. Session room number 3157 in Stockholm. Before finishing this session, I really hope to meet again on Monday and to exchange our good ideas and share the crucial solution approach for accelerating water-related investment in the future. Thank you so much for your participant. But do you have any other comment from the other SPC members or young SPC from the Lisa? Or as long as we have 2 more minutes for that. So do you have any, simple comments or any other, say something?
No, just thank you to all of our participants and to you, Professor Choi, for a great session.
Okay.
Yes, just echo that. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a great session and really looking forward to continuing with the session 2 and session 3 in Stockholm. Thank you so much.
Session 2 will be, offline on Monday, 9 a.m. in Stockholm time. Yeah, Lisa, that's true or not? I guess, okay.
Yes, sorry, that's true.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you so much once again. So I like to give the more attention, give my great pleasure to be moderate for this session. So let's meet in Stockholm again. Thank you so much. I'm going to close this session. Okay.
Thank you.
Have a nice day again.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.